Imagine this. You wake up in the middle of the night. The air feels heavy. You smell smoke. You open your window and see a red light in the distance. At first you think, maybe someone is burning wood. But then the light grows bigger, brighter, and suddenly you realize it is not just a small fire. The whole city is burning. This is not a movie. This is not a story someone made up. This is real history. This is London in the year 1666. London at that time was one of the busiest cities in Europe. About 350,000 people lived there. The streets were narrow and dark. Houses were tall, made of wood, and stood very close to each other. People worked in small shops and bakeries. The River Thames was full of boats bringing food and goods from other countries. But London was also dirty and dangerous. There were no proper fire brigades. Water supply was weak, and because most houses were built of dry wood, fire was always a risk. One small spark could burn an entire street. Just 1 year before the fire, in 1665, London had faced the Great Plague. Thousands of people died from disease. By 1666, people were tired, scared, but also hopeful that life would get better. They did not know that something even worse was about to come. In the east of London, there was a small street called Pudding Lane. On this street stood the bakery of a man named Thomas Farner. He supplied bread to the Royal Navy. His bakery had ovens that stayed hot even at night. On the evening of Saturday, September 1st, 1666, everything seemed normal. The people of London were preparing for Sunday, a day of rest and church. The city was quiet. But inside Farner's bakery, something dangerous was happening. Perhaps a spark fell from the oven. Maybe wood was left too close to the fire. No one knows exactly how it began, but late at night, the fire caught hold. Around midnight, the first flames spread in the bakery. Thomas Farner and his family were sleeping upstairs. Suddenly, they woke up to heat and smoke. They tried to escape. The family climbed out through a window to the neighbor's house. Everyone survived, except for one maid. She was too scared to jump and became the first victim of the Great Fire of London. At first, people thought they could control it. Fires were common in London. Usually, neighbors would throw buckets of water, use fire hooks to pull down burning wood, or create fire breaks by destroying houses around the flames. But this fire was different. It was faster, hotter, and stronger. That night, word quickly spread, "Fire! Fire on Pudding Lane!" Watchmen rang bells. Neighbors shouted and ran with buckets of water. Soon, the fire reached nearby houses. People rushed to call the Lord Mayor of London, Sir Thomas Bloodworth. When the mayor arrived, he saw the flames but made a huge mistake. He said, "A woman might piss it out." In other words, he thought the fire was small and not dangerous. He refused to order the pulling down of houses to stop the fire. His decision was fatal. Because the houses were close together and made of wood, the fire leapt from one house to another. By the time the mayor realized his mistake, it was too late. That night, the wind blew strongly from the east. The wind carried sparks through the air. Roofs caught fire. Flames jumped across streets. Wooden shops full of cloth, oil, and tar quickly burned like dry leaves. The fire spread so fast that people could not believe their eyes. Families woke up in the middle of the night, grabbed what they could, clothes, pots, pets, and ran into the streets. Some carried children. Some pulled carts. Some even threw their belongings into the River Thames to save them. By the morning of September 2nd, 1666, the Great Fire of London had truly begun. As the sun rose, black smoke covered the sky. Bells rang all over the city. People ran in every direction. The fire was no longer just a small bakery fire. It was now threatening the heart of London. Churches, markets, and homes were in danger. The mayor, the king's men, and ordinary citizens all looked at the rising flames and realized something terrible. This was not going to be easy to stop. The Great Fire of London had started its deadly journey.
When the people of London woke up on the morning of Sunday, September 2nd, 1666, they saw something they had never seen before. The sky was no longer blue. It was filled with thick black smoke. The smell of burning wood, tar, and cloth spread everywhere. The fire, which had started in a small bakery, was now eating entire streets. Church bells rang wildly, not for prayer, but to warn people, "Fire! Fire!" Mothers carried their babies. Fathers pulled carts filled with whatever they could save. Some people dragged mattresses, chairs, or food. Others carried their animals, dogs, cats, even chickens. Everyone was running, shouting, and crying. Londoners were terrified. Many had already lived through the Great Plague the year before. Now they faced another disaster. People whispered, "Is this God's punishment?" Others thought it might be an attack by enemies. Fear grew with every hour. The strong wind helped the fire spread faster. Sparks flew from roof to roof. Flames jumped across the narrow streets. Wooden houses, shops, and warehouses caught fire like dry grass. The fire rushed towards the River Thames. Warehouses along the river were full of things like sugar, oil, tar, and rum. These materials burned hotter and faster than wood. When the fire reached them, explosions shook the ground. The flames rose higher than church towers. The Lord Mayor, Sir Thomas Bloodworth, tried to escape his responsibility. When people begged him to act, he shouted, "I am spent, I can do no more," and left the scene. He did not organize the people. He did not order houses to be destroyed in time. Without leadership, panic grew. Some people tried to fight the fire with buckets of water, but the flames were too strong. Others tried to escape by boat on the River Thames. The river became crowded with small boats carrying families, goods, and even chickens and pigs. Imagine the voices. "Row faster! The fire is coming! Push the cart! Don't stop! Mother, where are you?" Families were torn apart in the chaos. Children cried. Horses neighed wildly. Dogs barked in panic. The whole city sounded like a battlefield. King Charles II refused to sit and do nothing. He came into the streets with soldiers, ordering them to pull down houses. His younger brother, the future King James II, worked alongside him. The king himself was seen giving directions and encouraging people. "Do not fear. We shall rebuild. Save yourselves, and the city shall rise again." But even with the king's presence, the fire was too powerful. Fire breaks couldn't stop it. Wherever houses were pulled down, sparks jumped over the empty spaces. Samuel Pepys' diary. The famous Londoner Samuel Pepys, who kept a diary, recorded what he saw that Monday. He wrote about the terrible sight of London in flames. Everybody endeavoring to remove their goods and flinging into the river or bringing them into lighters that lay off. Poor people staying in their houses as long as till the very fire touched them and then running into boats or clambering from one pair of stairs by the waterside to another. His words show how desperate people were. Some stayed in their houses until the fire was at their doors, hoping it would pass them by. By Monday afternoon, the fire was moving towards St. Paul's Cathedral, the pride of London. People believed the great stone building would survive. Inside the cathedral, printers and booksellers had stored thousands of books and papers. They thought the thick stone walls would protect their treasures. But they forgot about the wooden scaffolding around the church, used for repairs. They forgot about the stores of paper and books inside. As the fire approached, the wooden scaffolding caught flame first. Soon, the heat was so strong that the lead roof of St. Paul's began to melt. Streams of hot metal ran down the streets. That night, the unimaginable happened. St. Paul's Cathedral was swallowed by fire. Its massive walls cracked. Its great dome collapsed with a thunderous roar. People miles away could hear the crash. A writer described it, "The stones flew like grenades, the melted lead ran down the streets, and the very pavements glowed with fire." For Londoners, it was as if their city's heart had been ripped out. The fire eats everything. The destruction on Monday was endless. Entire districts vanished. Cheapside, a busy street full of shops, was gone. Schools, markets, inns, and homes all burned to the ground. People threw their belongings into the river, hoping to save at least something. But much was lost. Furniture, clothes, food, gold, silver, even wedding rings, everything was destroyed. Some people buried treasures underground, marking the spots with stones. Others hid goods in wells. But for many, nothing could be saved. On Monday night, the fire glowed even brighter. People in villages far outside London saw the red sky. Travelers on the roads stopped to watch in horror. Some thought the entire kingdom was burning. In the city itself, the noise was deafening. The crack of falling timbers, the roar of the flames, the screams of people, the ringing of bells. The fire had now become a monster too big for anyone to fight. Hope fades. On Sunday, people still hoped the fire could be stopped. By Monday night, many lost that hope. The fire was too wide, too fast, too strong. Londoners asked themselves, would the entire city burn? Would the Tower of London, filled with gunpowder, explode? Would there be anything left at all? Everyone prayed for the wind to stop, because only the wind, it seemed, could save London. By Tuesday, September 4th, 1666, the Great Fire had burned for more than 2 days. Londoners were exhausted. Some had not slept since Sunday morning. Their bodies were tired, but fear kept them awake. Everywhere they looked, flames were still rising. The most frightening danger on Tuesday was the Tower of London. Why? Because the tower held huge stores of gunpowder. If the fire reached it, the entire city could explode. The blast might even destroy nearby villages. Soldiers and citizens worked desperately to protect the tower. They pulled down houses around it to create empty spaces. Men carried water in buckets. Others used hooks to drag burning timbers away. For once, Londoners felt united. If the tower goes, we all go with it. Thankfully, their hard work saved the tower. The fire did not cross the cleared ground. The fortress stood, and with it, London's last line of defense. But the fire did not stop elsewhere. On Tuesday morning, it moved toward Fleet Street in the area near the Temple. These were busy places, filled with lawyers' houses, shops, and printing presses. Law students and workers tried to save their buildings. They used leather buckets, axes, and even barrels of beer to fight the flames. But the fire was stronger. Soon, the temple was gone. By now, more than 100,000 people had fled their homes. Imagine the sight. Long lines of carts pulled by horses, loaded with furniture, food, and crying children. Women carrying babies, bags of clothes, or even heavy pots and pans. Men pulling dogs or goats behind them. The roads out of London packed with refugees. People camped in the fields outside the city. Some slept under trees. Others built small tents from blankets and sticks. The rich hired boats to carry their goods down the Thames. The poor had nothing but the clothes on their backs. One witness wrote, "Some under hedges of the fields, and some under carts, and some in nothing but their shirts. On Tuesday, Samuel Pepys visited the king and warned him that the fire was out of control. Pepys wrote in his diary, "The fire having continued all this night, if not increased, and now taking hold of St. Paul's Church and setting it on fire, the whole city was likely to be destroyed." He described the terror of seeing so many people in despair. Everywhere people carrying their goods, running and crying. Very sad to see. As the fire grew, so did people's anger. Many Londoners believed the fire was not an accident. Rumors spread that foreigners had started it, especially the French or Dutch, because England was at war with both nations. Crowds attacked strangers in the streets. Foreigners were beaten. Even innocent Londoners with strange accents were suspected. Fear made people cruel. The king had to send soldiers to protect foreigners from being killed, but the mistrust did not stop. On Tuesday night, the fire seemed endless. From high places, people could see the whole city glowing red. Sparks flew high into the sky. The smoke rose like a dark mountain. Some thought the world was ending. One woman said, "It is like the day of judgment." And yet, hope was not completely gone. People prayed the wind would finally drop. They prayed that God would have mercy on London. By the end of Tuesday, nearly half of London was destroyed. The richest areas, like Cheapside and St. Paul's, were gone. Shops, markets, schools, and halls were burned. Thousands of houses lay in ashes. But still the fire burned on. The question remained, would the fire ever stop? Or would it consume all of London? By Wednesday, September 5, 1666, London had been burning for more than 3 long days. The people were weak, tired, and hopeless. Yet this day brought the first sign that the end of the fire was near. Since Sunday, a strong east wind had carried the flames across the city. Every time people thought they could stop the fire, the wind pushed sparks into new streets. But on Wednesday morning, something different happened. The wind began to drop. The air grew calmer. The fire stopped leaping so wildly from house to house. Londoners lifted their heads and said, "God has heard our prayers." With the wind weaker, the king's men could finally act. The soldiers and workers used gunpowder to blow up whole rows of houses. This was dangerous work. Imagine standing with barrels of gunpowder when fire burned only a few steps away. But the men were brave. They set explosions in the path of the fire. The blasts shook the ground. Roofs collapsed. Walls fell into clouds of dust. But the empty gaps left behind worked. The fire had nothing left to burn. For once, the flames were truly trapped. People joined together with new hope. Bucket lines formed again. Soldiers dragged away burning timbers. Others helped each other carry water, sand, and tools. The king's brother, the Duke of York, rode through the streets encouraging the workers. Everyone felt the same. This must end today. Even though the fire was weakening, it was still terrifying. On Tuesday morning, St. Paul's Cathedral was completely gone. Its great stones lay in broken piles, still smoking. The iron inside had melted like wax. Other churches and markets were still burning. Houses near Holborn and Smithfield caught fire. But without the strong wind, people could fight back. That night, Samuel Pepys wrote in his diary that London was at last safe. He described how happy people were to see the flames die. Some knelt and prayed in the streets. Others cried tears of relief. By Tuesday morning, September 6, 1666, The Great Fire was finally out. The city lay silent, covered in ashes. Smoke still rose from broken houses. Some places glowed with small embers, but the great danger had passed. The fire had been stopped. London was saved, though it was hardly recognizable. The damage. The numbers were shocking. More than 13,000 houses destroyed. Around 90 churches burned. Shops, schools, markets, and halls were gone. At least 70,000 people homeless. But only a small number of lives were recorded as lost. Most Londoners had escaped with their families, though not with their homes. Imagine standing on a hill after the fire. The heart of London was gone. Black ruins stretched as far as the eye could see. No sound of bells, no markets, no busy streets, just silence and smoke. One man said, "London was, but is no more." But was this truly the end of London? Or could the city rise again from the ashes?
The fire was gone, but the pain had only begun. On Thursday, September 6th, 1666, the people of London woke up to a city that did not look like London anymore. More than 70,000 people had lost their homes. Families who once lived in fine houses now slept outside, under the open sky. Some carried beds or blankets they had saved. Others had nothing but the clothes they wore. Children cried for food and water. Whole families camped in the open fields outside the city walls. Smithfield, Moorfields, and Islington became huge camps for the homeless. Shops and markets were destroyed. There was no bread to buy, no meat to cook, and no clean water nearby. People begged for food. Rich and poor stood side by side in the same misery. Mothers tried to quiet hungry babies with pieces of dry crust or even grass. For days, fear spread that there would be famine. King Charles II saw the suffering and ordered that food be brought to the city. Carts of bread came from the countryside. The king opened the royal stores to give meals to the poor. Soldiers guarded food lines so no one would fight. The people were grateful, but they still felt hopeless. Even though the fire had stopped, fear had not. Rumors spread quickly. Some said foreigners had started the fire on purpose. Others whispered it was Catholics trying to destroy Protestant England. Some even believed it was the work of the Dutch or the French, enemies of England at that time. Angry crowds attacked innocent strangers in the streets. Foreigners and Catholics had to hide for safety. The truth was simple. The fire had started in a bakery, and the wind had carried it. But people in pain wanted someone to blame. Many Londoners returned to the ashes of their homes. Some hoped to find hidden treasure. Others searched for iron nails or wood they could sell. A few found coins melted together or silver turned black by smoke. But most found nothing. Their homes were gone forever. Before the fire, London was noisy with bells, carts, markets, and shouts of traders. After the fire, there was silence. The bells had melted. The markets were gone. The great churches were empty shells. One witness wrote, "You might walk hours and not hear a sound, only your own steps upon the ashes." Just 1 year before, in 1665, the Great Plague had killed thousands in London. Now, with so many people living in crowded camps, everyone feared disease would return. The smell of smoke and dead animals filled the air. People were weak and dirty, living without proper shelter. Doctors warned that sickness could spread quickly. Londoners prayed this new disaster would not come. Standing among the ruins, King Charles III promised his people, "London shall rise again. A greater and nobler city shall be built." These words gave hope. But how could such a promise be kept when so much had been lost? The fire was over, but the story of rebuilding London was just beginning. The fire had left London in ruins, but from those ashes, a new city would rise. This part of the story is about how London rebuilt itself, stronger and more beautiful than before. After the fire, King Charles II told the people, "London shall be rebuilt. It shall be greater, cleaner, and safer than before." He called together architects, builders, and leaders. He wanted not just to repair London, but to make a new London. The problem of rebuilding. But rebuilding was not easy. Thousands of people had lost their homes. They wanted to rebuild quickly. The streets were filled with ashes and broken stones. Money was short. The fire had destroyed banks, businesses, and goods. Everyone asked, how can we start again? One of the greatest architects of the time was Sir Christopher Wren. He brought the king a bold new plan for London. Wide streets instead of narrow alleys. Strong stone houses instead of weak wooden ones. Large open squares for people to gather. A grand new cathedral for the city. His dream was to turn London into a city like Rome or Paris, modern and beautiful. But there was a problem. Wren's plan would take many years and much money. The people were desperate to have homes quickly. They could not wait for a perfect plan. So the city agreed on a simpler plan. Streets would be made a little wider. Houses would be built of brick and stone, not wood. New laws would make the city safer. It was not as grand as Wren's dream, but it was practical. Wren was given one great task: to rebuild St. Paul's Cathedral. The old cathedral had been destroyed in the fire. Now London needed a symbol of hope. Wren worked for more than 30 years on the new cathedral. He designed it with a huge dome, unlike anything in England. Thousands of workers helped, brick by brick, stone by stone. When it was finished, St. Paul stood tall, shining above the city. Even today, it is one of the most famous buildings in London. The fire had taught the people many lessons. Wooden houses were banned. Only brick or stone could be used. Thatched roofs were forbidden. Streets were made wider, so fire could not spread so fast again. Fire brigades were organized with better tools. London became safer, cleaner, and stronger. For years, the city looked like a giant building site. Carpenters, masons, and bricklayers worked everywhere. The sound of hammers and saws filled the air. Families lived in half-built houses, waiting for walls to rise. But slowly, the city came back to life. Shops reopened. Markets grew busy again. The bells of new churches rang once more. Though London was rebuilt, people never forgot the fire. Old men told children about the nights when the sky was red. Families remembered the day they lost their homes. Writers recorded stories so future generations would know what had happened. In 1677, a tall stone monument was built near Pudding Lane, where the fire began. It still stands today, reminding everyone of those 4 terrible days. London rises again. The Great Fire had destroyed almost everything, but it had also given the city a chance to start fresh. From ashes, London became stronger with stone houses, wider with safer streets, prouder with St. Paul's Cathedral rising high. It was not the end of London, It was the beginning of a new London. The Great Fire of 1666 was a disaster, but it also brought change. It showed how people can suffer, yet rise again. It taught Londoners to build better, to work together, and to hope for tomorrow. Even today, the story of the Great Fire is remembered, not only as a tale of destruction, but also as a story of rebirth.